Sure, we're doing public hearing first, the budget, sorry, we're gonna do the pledge.
It's now 6 p.m. I call this meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which is one nation under God, indivisible. So before we get to, do we do roll call then? Okay, so we're gonna do roll call. Matt Lancaster,
President.
trustee Brett
Present.
trustee Ben Happy here, Vice President Stadhansky here. Trustee Deal here, Mr. Baldwin here. Okay, so we have quorum. Next up, we have identification of potential conflicts of interest. Is there anything in tonight's agenda that anyone wants to identify as possible conflict of interest? Okay, next we'll go to the public hearing. The board will receive information from the public in accordance with state statute 19.822. Being advised, board discussion is limited to only clarify the information received. No action shall be taken under public comments. General procedure is to allow each person to speak for 3 minutes. Although the president may grant extensions, reduce time, or limit the number of like-minded speakers on the same topic. Anyone wishing to speak should register their name on the sign-in sheet prior to the start of the meeting. Having the sheet from the table, there is nobody signed up, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead to the presentation and discussion of the 2026 proposed budget with public input. Alyssa, I will hand it over to you.
Perfect. So like Scott said, this will be the presentation and discussion of the 2026 proposed budget. So to start, we'll just review our budget timeline. So in July and August, staff initiated the 5-year capital plan. We distributed budget templates to departments internally to produce their figures and numbers. And then we held a budget kickoff and visioning session with the board. Then in September, myself and Chad, the village manager, met with the departments internally to review budgets. And from there, the proposed budget was distributed to the board, and we held our first budget workshop. That then leads us into October here, where our public hearing was posted. And then obviously we're currently having a public hearing right now. And then come November, we'll have budget adoption right before the county obviously utilizes those numbers to produce the tax bills. So for the 2026, just a couple overall proposed budget highlights. The village saw a lot of growth once again in our net new construction, equated to 3.447%. In 25 here, the village conducted a village-wide market update with accurate appraisals. Staff and internally, a salary study was completed by PAA, and those salary results will be implemented in 2026. And the property tax levy increased by $115,000 from 2025 due to that net new construction amount. There's also use of over $3.6 million of fund balance proposed in the budget. And overall, staff reviewed all funding source options, such as park impact fees and stormwater, when producing the budget to ensure we were utilizing those dollars when necessary versus just using general operating dollars. And then once again, we continued to improve our 5-year capital plan. So from there, our general fund revenues, once again, just a couple high-level highlights. We got increase in state transportation aid funds through the DOT. All revenue lines were reviewed and were made more in line with trends and actuals. What was budgeted for 2025 was a little light, so we ensured that everything looked accurate. We kept interest income consistent. This is a line item that we don't want to use to help balance our budget each year due to the potential fluctuation of interest rates. Obviously, if you have a high interest rate market, like about a year ago when it was 5%, if it dips down to, let's say, 2, each year, then you're trying to bridge a budget gap. So we're trying to stay fairly consistent with that. If we do get higher than normal interest income, that would just be a positive, but not something we want to utilize to balance a budget. From there, we moved our 2% fire dues that we get through the state into a separate special revenue fund along with the expenditures. And then there was a line item that is 0 for 2026. It was an agreement with Lexington Homes. We were kind of just the middleman in the situation, so there's no corresponding revenues and expenditures that went along with that item. So from there, this is just a snip out of our budget book, but it's a depiction based on each revenue category on how we will be funding the 2026 budget. So overall, you can see our total revenues were about $6.6 million. Of that, our general fund levy equates to 1.7 million, which is about 27% of our revenues. So obviously that shows that the village does a really good job of finding other revenue sources to help balance our budget other than just using tax levy dollars. So from there, general fund expenditures, once again, some highlights, like I mentioned before, we did the PAA salary study, and those increases will go into effect on January 1st. Like a lot of even businesses, we're seeing increased costs in health insurance. The contingency, that was a line item that was created in last year 2025's budget to project unforeseen items that could occur. 100,000 was budgeted to date. For 25, we've only utilized about 50,000, so that number for 26 was reduced down to 75,000. And then there is some small increases in general administration contractual services for our contract through GovAI, which is artificial intelligence to ensure that staff has the capability to utilize that, but also ensuring security through a specific program that kind of limits some of the inputs on that, and also use of Adobe Pro. And then to continue with our road maintenance, there's funding for seal and crack coating on Horn Road, Keeper Road, Erdel Road, and Lakeshore Drive. And then another big thing was there's decreased costs for the building inspection contract. That'll be later on, obviously, in this agenda, but due to the fact that we hired a full-time inspector on, and he's currently getting his certifications, that's kind of phasing out Birchbach inspection, but until he gets all those certifications, we will need to utilize Birchbach a little bit more in 2026. So obviously his contract amount will be drastically decreasing due to that. So once again, similar to the revenue, this is just a little snapshot of out of the budgets. Expenditures need to equal revenues to have a balanced budget for the general fund. So once again, our expenditures are 6.6 million. And this kind of just breaks it down between the groupings of departments. You might notice that for capital outlay for 2025 and 26, those expenditures were moved to a separate fund. There are some costs in 25, which were for projects that were carried over from 24 for completion. So with that, that takes us into the 2026 capital improvements. This kind of just highlights just the 26. Obviously, in our budget book, there's a whole 5-year capital plan out there, but just to highlight the current, some of the things on here would be there's going to be some road projects on Clover Ridge, Old Highway Road, Homestead Lane, Eisenhower Drive, and Unison Way, of which a couple of those are obviously going to be funded through the TIDs. There'll be a new fire engine, and of course the completion of Fire Station 70 in the fire department, and then just some new equipment or replacements in public works and normal stormwater and Harrison utility as well. So from there, I guess the big question, this kind of shows the allocation between the total levy amount for the village, which will be $4,715,000. And this just shows a breakdown of how those funds would be allocated between capital projects, our general fund, and our debt service. So pretty fairly proportionate based on what expenditures we'll have. So from there, that goes into the general fund balance. Our policy states that we need to have a minimum of 30% of next year's expenditures, which next year's expenditures will be about 6.6 million, which means our minimum balance in fund balance should be 2 million, which we need easily. Like I mentioned prior, in 26, we're going to be utilizing over $3.6 million of fund balance, which will be spent on the fire station, which helped us lower our borrowing in 25 to help pay for that project. a new ERP system, which is an accounting software, that we're looking at changing to sometime in 26. We're paying for a lawnmower and some of our minor computer upgrades with those fund balance. Then moving forward, we'll continue to look at any one-time expenditures and where our fund balance is to see what we can utilize fund balance for versus general levy or any other operating revenues. The next slide here is just a quick overview. This was from our public hearing notice that kind of just highlights all the other special revenue funds. Like for impact fees, again, funds that we receive money from through permitting. Just kind of a quick overview of all that along with the TIDs and of course our water and sewer utility. So I guess the slide that the most people care about is the 2026 proposed tax rate. So this slide has been updated since what was put in the packet last week. As I was reviewing, I noticed that the template that was used in prior years had an error on it. So I apologize for that, but we found it, and so this will be updated. So, or this slide is updated based on those dollar amounts. So if we look at a house that was in 2024 that was assessed at $210,400. In 24, the tax rate was $3.57 per thousand, which then equated to their property tax bill just for the Harrison portion of about $751. Then if we fast forward to 2025, where we had the revaluation, that this home's value went to $322,900, which was about an increase of 53.5%. Which was pretty close to the average increase of the village overall, which was about 56. That was obviously prior to open book and any adjustments that the assessor made. So then that equates to a proposed tax rate of 2.34%. Like I said, that's what's updated from the original slide. So $2.34 per thousand, which equates to a tax bill of about $756. And that would be an increase from the 24 to 25 tax bill of about $4.65. And just to put into comparison, from 23 to 24, where this home's property value stayed the same, they saw an increase of about $17. So obviously a much lower increase, especially due to the fact that their home increased about 54%. So there's that calculation there. And I can get this out to you guys if you want the slide updated as well. But
As long as it's, as long as we can, make sure that it's available for the public.
yeah, absolutely. I can definitely post it online. So with that next steps then, so the next board meeting will be on Tuesday, November 11th, which is slotted to be the budget adoption. That way we can adopt it in time to get all the information over to the county so they can start compiling, obviously, tax bills so they can get those mailed by state statute before the third Monday in December. So with that, any questions?
So see you later, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
There we
good.
go. Okay, yes, just a couple.
Yep.
Comments. One, with the updated slide. I would like that, but also if you have any about that actually, so anybody that's looking at the Penta online
Absolutely.
has the
Sure.
current information that we're evaluating,
Mhm.
that would be great. Then can you go back to that slide in a second?
Absolutely.
I just wanted a quick math here for a second, so that goes into my question. I had other notes here, but those notes are now
Okay.
not valid, so. Give me 1 second, so 755. 59. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry, I brought it up.
And 750. So a question that I have then for my fellow board, and I'm definitely very much a conservative. There's a lot of costs that our residents are having. We're definitely still in an inflationary environment, although I think the economy is getting better from an inflationary environment. But we've got a lot of projects going on too. And I want to be fair to our taxpayers. So the answer to, right? If you look at this math, that works out to a 0.5% increase. And I just, as a board, I think just as a discussion here, are we comfortable with a 0.5% increase and using the amount of fund balance that we're using, because I think this came out more favorable. I'm sure probably if you got final numbers, I think this is more favorable than what our preliminaries were. So my only question is, should that be more like a 1.5 or 2% increase? You know, and use a little less fund balance, but I'm okay either way, to be honest, but I think it's a good discussion point as we look at where we're taking the village. One reason why I'm asking.
I mean, I will just say from, the perspective, putting this together, the only difference from the levy was that 115,000, which was net new construction. Otherwise, I mean, we're taking no other increase. And I think, obviously how we get to a balanced budget, it was already determined prior when we took out the borrowing that majority of the fund balance we're using is obviously to help fund the remaining portion of the fire station. I mean, that was, agreed upon during the debt. So I mean, other than that, the amount of fund balance we're using is fairly minimal in regards to the ERP system, a lawnmower, and our basic computer upgrades. So I mean, just I guess from my perspective, I think the amount of fund balance we're using, I think would be fair. Obviously, we still have quite a bit of fund balance. It's not like we're going super crazy this year on anything outside of the fire station. Obviously, it's up to the board on how you guys want to proceed. But we're still gonna be in a great position in regards to fund balance, and I just wanna make that clear.
Go ahead, Matt.
That makes, so, because part of this was when I was doing the math, it was different here, so I just think this updated number, I just want to clarify, so we are. The reason the levy increase versus wasn't showing the full net originally, so you are taking the full 3.44 net new construction.
Absolutely, because if we don't, we're gonna be able to.
Right, correct, that's what, exactly, that's, okay, so you definitely do have that full.
Yeah, the net new construction was like 114,600, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
even a nice, small even amount, yes, but that's what it
Yeah,
is.
well, as long as that's why I want to staff opinion board, we are known as a fiscally conservative board, and I think. As a board, and I think more importantly, staff, you guys do a wonderful job of managing the village with. Really limited resources to compare to some other entities. I think there's a lot of good work being done, and we have a lot to be proud of how we're managing in the end, residents' money, so
Right.
I'm fine with where we are. So.
And also to interject, I mean, this property, that's about the average, so, I mean, we know based on the revaluation that some of the fire lanes or the water property. See, their increase was not 54%, it could have been over 100, so I guess keeping in mind, because if we were to change the mill, I mean, that's going to affect that even more. So like I said, this is just about an average home, obviously it's gonna fluctuate, not everybody's gonna be $4, it's gonna depend on the value, but I mean, you can see the very minimal amount, especially from 24 to 25, even comparing it from 23 to 24, so, obviously with the revaluation. Everybody's tax bills have been very, very different.
I know mine's up more than the average.
Right.
I don't for that, so yeah, exactly, so.
I mean, just keeping that in mind, like I said, it's totally your decision, but keeping in mind that it's not just the status quo year where we did not have updates and values.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, I just want to commend staff on this. I think this is presented well. Very easy to see, and I think it's good that we're doing this because there will be some extra costs from the Kimberly School District this year, based upon decisions made at the state level that we can't control at the level here. A $1.5 million increase for school tax, which I think Harrison will probably get 60% of that. So this helps a lot that we're not increasing taxes here, but we can't control what happens at the school. It's controlled by the state, but at least we can show people that we are trying to be fiscal conservative here. Thank you.
Trustee Teal.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa, for your explanation, your perspective on the fund balance and the use thereof. That, my question was, and you answered it already, basically was when you came up with that usage and that amount, was there a lot of haste and concern? Or are we comfortable with that?
You mean the use of fund balance?
Yes.
I mean, we're comfortable, like I said, I mean, based on our policy that we have internally, the minimum we should have is 30%, which is 2 million. And I mean, if I go back to, this slide here, I mean, this is tough to see, right? It's called good graphical, but I mean, at year end, we're proposing, close to 12 million. I mean, we are
Right.
thoroughly above that, like I said, with the use, and that was projected to use over $3 million for the for the fire station. I mean, we're still probably gonna be down. I mean, it's tough to propose what the end of 26 will look like, but we're still gonna be over probably 8 million. I think that's still fair. And again, keeping an eye on that, seeing what we can do moving forward to reduce that down a little more. Should also be a goal, that staff and board has to keep looking at that and ensuring we're keeping that at a fairly decent level to ensure that's not getting fairly or very high. I think it's important. So, I mean, like I said, the majority what we're using that was already discussed prior to use for the fire station, we're moving up for the borrowing. So, other than that, we will $3.5 million, we're only using like an additional $100,000, which is very minimal in the grand scheme of when you look at our balances. So, I don't see any issues with it thus far.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your perspective. I feel like this year, with the revaluation, it says that there's a lot of angst over that already, and it probably be viewed as manipulation of what they're going to be. A good spot that landed. I suggest that we leave it, we're we're into it as landed.
Thank you. What was this?
Thank you. I was going to echo exactly what Frank said. I just think there was such an uproar about the reassessment, and the anticipation was that we were going to raise taxes sky high. We're not, so I thought we were, having to make legible increase for most residents. So I agree, we just operate as shown here, and I think our residents overall will be pleased with our decision.
And I think Melissa did a really good job understanding what we as a board had corrected as far as reviewing the levy projects that were before us. The fact that we are continuing to operate the roads as something that's very important, not only operating the roads, but extending Eisenhower. That was something that we had requested as a board to move up in the schedule to get into this year, and that was very important. So, the fund balance, I just believe that we are set up for having conversations of once in a lifetime. We took a big chunk of the fund balance to take that, because to me, when I see them, we're taxed. But we're going to see something come through the pipe here. Maybe we don't know what the future holds, but if something comes along that we need something, we're not going to have to borrow. We can just take it right off the general fund.
Correct. And having the fund balance that we do have has also helped us when we've gone up for borrowing, because they can see we're fiscally responsible. So we have like the second one top, borrowing ratings were a AA1, which is a really high rating, and with that also helps to get the best interest rates as well. So I mean, yes, we need to be mindful of where the fund balance is moving forward and currently, but having being fiscally responsible also helps us when we have offer as well. So that's important too, because if you're very low bond rate, your percentages are going to be very high, for debt borrowing, and it's another consider that we've had lower interest rates compared to some of the other communities in the area who are not as high as we are. So there are some positives as well, to look at the
So the plan would be, and any changes would have to be happen now for the.
Correct. You're looking at obviously anything that needs to be changed would have to be done prior to the November 11th meeting, because that would be prior to obviously the Thursday before we have to have the packet out, for the public. So any changes would have to be made by the Thursday before the next. Before I don't know what that is. November 11th is Thursday or Tuesday, excuse me. So
will that process be that if somebody comes up with a change?
I mean, it's something that's ideally we have to adopt, but if there isn't something, if someone has a discussion, we could call a meeting in between here, so check next week, because we don't have much time. But if that's the case, and someone had a change, it could be discussed at that meeting, but then we have to hold a special meeting after that. That's a final adoption, I believe, because we have a tight window to get everything to the county.
I believe as a board, or anytime I think of it, staff would find of the state notifying me that some information or something, right? Some weird thing happens. We hope that shouldn't happen. Let's hope that you guys work tonight. We should be agreeing that because of our budget, we should be trying to have special meetings or other things. And I would say I'm comfortable with this budget. It's not negotiated this right.
So let me ask the board, is there any changes they see for with budget? We're all good.
The 11th meeting for final action.
And with that being said, I will now close the public hearing. Check that one.
No, I don't believe any.
Anybody here want to speak on the budget before we officially close it? No? Okay, moving on to the item 6 on our agenda, which is correspondence or communication ordinance. You have anyone have any communication you want to related to people here? Not, we're going to move on to. Oh, sorry. Trustee Bowen.
Yes, thank you. The other thing I just wanted to acknowledge and express my condolences to the family discussion. Only I heard from the village staff that he had passed away, and I had the opportunity and privilege to work with Scott. I just wanted to acknowledge his service to the village, and also again his condolences to his family.
Thank you. All right, next up we have corrections and approval of the previous meeting minutes, starting with September 30th, 2025 budget workshop minutes. And we have September 30th, 2025 village board meeting minutes. So want to make a motion to approve both of those, we can do that. Trustee Brenner. Trustee Brenner. Make a motion to approve both minutes, previous minutes, on September 30th, 2025. Trustee Lancaster. I'll second. So we have a motion by Trustee Brandmeier and a second by Trustee Lancaster for approving the meeting minutes of September 30th, 2025, both the budget workshop and the village board. Any discussion? There being no discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up is the public comments portion. The board will receive information from the public according to state statute 19.84.2. The advised work session is limited to only clarify the information received. No action shall be taken on public comments. General procedures to allow each person 3 minutes to speak, although the president may grant extensions, reduce the time, or limit the number of like-minded speakers on the same topic. Anyone wishing to speak should register their name on the sign-in sheet prior to starting the meeting. Since no one has signed up, is anybody in the crowd want to come forth and speak the word on the topic? Yeah, okay. I just need a parcel sign. I don't know. I never did this before. You need a parcel sign. Like a nice.
I look at the CSN that's going to be.
Oh, it's on the agenda. Okay, so we'll wait until that motion makes sense. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I will close the public comments. Next up is reports. Everyone had a chance to look at the reports. Anybody have any questions or comments on the reports? The one thing that I will ask the sheriff's department is, you're the new sheriff, everything starts, right? Yes. So the traffic report that you sent, in the packet, I noticed that 50% of the citations were written on 55, Highway 10, and 114. I'd like to see more citations, warnings done on some of the other streets, like Road, Lake Park. You know, it just seems like there's only 3 roads. If you add all the streets, it's 50% on just on the state highways. So I would ask that we try to be a little bit more present, like Midway and Knowing Road and Lake Park and some of the other streets. And just feel like that's where the problems are. I know you guys do a great job of monitoring those highways, but if people would like to have more enforcement on some of the minor arterial roads. So that's all I have. Anything else? Yeah.
So, well, first of all, we're very happy to have you. I'm personally excited for the affiliation to have a on-site supervisor and to help introduce more. I do have one request, and this is I'm working with Chad as well. So I was glad to see that a couple of neighborhood traffic studies in here at the formal board. So that was fantastic. And just hoping that you can partner with Chad on getting the data off of our permanent signs, like on a monthly basis or something. That we can report on some of that, so the public has transparency on those. So then that shows some of our speeding issues that we hear about, are they real issues or perceived issues, and having that data helps prove that out. So we're still trying to find a national company that. Sounds good.
In the process of Keely goes wrong. It collects those. Some of it. You got he'll get an opportunity. I think Joe reviewed some of them when we first got inside. There's some worse than others. Other than that, any other questions? Otherwise, we will move on to approval of the bills and claims for September 2025. We're looking for a motion and a second on that. Trustee Van Gundy.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the bills and claims for September 2025 as written circulated.
Trustee Baldwin. So we have a motion by Trustee Van Gundy and a second by Trustee Baldwin. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the bills and claims? There being no discussion, please vote your ballot.
Sorry, what one thing?
You need to know.
I'm good. All right, I was meant to go vote. I'm sorry.
Please vote your ballot. Your name pops up every time. So
Got excited. That's what I said. I tried to get those.
the motion passes unanimously. Since there's no appointments for this month, we'll move on to an old business, which is unusual. So we'll go ahead and go to new business, item 13A.
This is a final plat for Forest Ridge subdivision, Dirk Summit LLC, North Shore Road and Highway 114, parcels 39522 and 39526. And the motion is to approve the final plat for Forest Ridge subdivision, subject to the following conditions. 1, no storage accommodations within the cul-de-sac area shall be made on individual site plans with alignment of driveways leaving enough space for snow accumulation. 2, the developer shall keep the bike lane along Old Highway Road clear of any construction debris and erosion runoff. 3, a letter of credit as agreed to in the development agreement is received when the village signs the final plat. Lot 7, 8, 15, 31, 51, and 60 wetlands. Sale of lot shall not occur until wetland impacts are remediated by Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. 5, erosion control silt fence shall be installed in accordance with state specifications along the right-of-way line of all streets prior to road acceptance. 6, all lots shall have a storm sewer lateral provided for sump pump discharge. 7, all drainage ways, drainage easement, and associated infrastructure shall be installed, graded, and seeded prior to roadway acceptance. 8, all utilities including but not limited to sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer, gas, electric, cable, phone shall be installed prior to roadway acceptance. 9, if applicable, wetland terminations and/or studies shall be provided to the village. 10, benchmarks shall be established on all hydrant tables. And number 11, grading and drainage plan shall identify elevations of ground at foundation.
So we'll need a motion and a second on this. Trustee Bernard, well, need a motion and a second. Trustee Bernard.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the final plat for Forest Ridge subdivision, Dirk Summit LLC, North Shore Road, Highway 114, parcels 39522 and 39526. It's printed circulated, including the 11 conditions. That's printed circulated, and just also about the planning commission. This also for this unanimously 6-0.
Trustee Baldwin. So we have a motion by Trustee Van Hefty and a second by Trustee Baldwin. Any discussion? Trustee Bernard.
The question I have, the previous owner of that plot tried to fill in some of the holes with dirt, and he already paid out. Now we have all this dirt along 114 filled. I mean, I don't think it's right, but that all that dirt being hauled in. That dirt is not topsoil from here. That dirt that's there was all trucked in.
But all we can do is trust staff and they're going through the process. I
Just want to put it right.
This is Chad. This is Chad. They have all the proper permits to do that, so I don't think the previous person went through the permitting with the DNR in order to haul in and fill that.
I don't know. I mean, any other comments? I don't feel. I got you. All right. All right. Trustee Deal.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion, these new developments around sidewalks and trails. I don't see anything on the plan that addresses that or any of the conditions that address that.
That's addressed in the development plan, the development agreement that the board approved at the last meeting.
Okay.
And it's going to basically be a sidewalk on one side of the road around the subdivision. I think I don't remember the north side of the road, I think, and then connect into a sidewalk along North Shore Road that will ultimately connect into the trail that's going in along Old Highway Road.
Okay, thank you. If you want, we can review that.
No, it's.
And it also spells out for a trail around the stormwater detention pond and the dedication of 2 lots for future parks.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Trustee Lancaster.
Thank you. So my only comment is, I'm going to support this tonight because I do believe in the process. I know there's a lot of work done here. It's scheduled with the planning commission unanimously, and I do believe in the work that the planning commission does. I know a process question, it's process feedback, I guess, that I think needs to be looked at for the next subdivision that we come along. And that is, I do have an issue with condition 4, that we're kind of hunting the wetland issues and letting this all get developed around the wetland issues with just our only real goal here is we just can't sell those lots until it's dealt with. But who knows how and where how you deal with, and you can end up causing other issues for people with water outdoor stuff. So I personally believe with the next subdivision that would come here, that any wetlands should be dealt with before we get to the final plot point here, and that you would be if everything resolved, now we know that it's a clean subdivision. So could you?
So if I, Chair, if I can just address that.
Yeah, Chad, well, if Matt, Planning Commission, this was discussed for 30 minutes, but he wasn't here, so Chad is still added what we discussed.
Sure. So there was a lot of discussion from a surrounding property owner that was concerned about the filling of wetlands in a wooded area, and then ultimately draining onto their properties. They have most of the wetland fill permits already for those lots, and we have the documentation in our files, so that is mostly taken care of. There's a couple lots that, if a property owner bought a wooded lot and wanted to fill the wetland, they'd have to go to the DNR and get that themselves, but it wouldn't preclude them from building a new property on it. There was concern at the Planning Commission how the village is going to regulate filling these wetlands and wooded areas, and we don't have a lot of jurisdiction. It's really up to the property owner and the DNR issuing those, but we would hope that we would be able to communicate out the information if somebody decided to fill it, but I can probably guarantee you the DNR isn't going to allow wetlands in wooded areas to be filled because of the nature of the wetland. So most of these wetland issues have been taken care of. This is pretty much a standard condition. The other thing I would just note is it's hard to, some of this is based on when the final and the preliminary plat gets filed, that they're able to seek approvals to fill it by state statute on an individual basis by the lot. But we do have most of the paperwork for a big portion of the wetlands that have already been approved by the DNR.
Question? Any other discussion? With no further discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13B.
This is a certified survey map for Joe Egan and Dave Barlow for 74344 Highway 114, parcel 38762. And the motion is to approve the certified survey map subject to the following conditions. Number 1, any development of lot 2 shall require a separate access point granted by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. And number 2, any development of lot 2 shall require rezoning to a zoning district appropriate for the use.
Trustee Ball.
I'll make a motion to approve the CSN for Joe Egan, Dave Barlow, that was 4344 Highway 114, parcel 38762, as printed circular.
Trustee Field. I'll second the motion. So we have a motion by Trustee Baldwin and a second by Trustee Field. Any discussion? Looks like the Planning Commission approved this. If there's no other comments, let's go ahead and vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13C.
This is for various payment requests. Number 1, certificate of payment number 4 for Garrison Compost Truck for $160,098.71. Number 2, certificate of payment number 3 for the Village Hall Generator Project for $116,904.65. And application for payment number 1 to IKM Building Solutions for Fire Station 70 for $154,128. Application for payment number 1 Johnson John Mechanical for Fire Station 70 for $9,357.50. Application for payment number 1 to Meyer Construction for Fire Station 70 for $450,188.85. Application for payment number 1 to BOE Power Systems Fire Station 70 for $106,211.90. Certificate of payment number 3 for Northeast Asphalt for the 2025 asphalt surfacing project for $473,723.70. Application for payment number 1 Bayland Buildings DPW expansion project for $894,559.31. And certificate for payment number 10 to Jane Frederickson for Crossroads Business Park for $33,601.51. And the motion is to approve the 9 application for payments for various projects totaling $2,398,774.10.
Trustee Field.
I'll move to approve the 9 application for payments for various projects totaling $2,390,774.10.
Trustee Baldwin.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Trustee Field and a second by Trustee Baldwin. Any discussion? Having no discussion, please vote your ballots. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13P.
These are change orders for the DPW expansion project for various items. Change order number 9 is for $11,762.20. Change order number 10 is for a credit of $275. Change order number 11 is for a credit of $15,435. And change order number 12 is for $9,660. And the motion is to approve change orders number 9, 10, 11, and 12 with a net increase of $2,000.36.
Trustee Field.
I move to approve change orders number 9, 10, 11, and 12 with an increase of $2,000.36.
Trustee Brandmeier. I'll second. So we have a motion by Trustee Field and a second by Trustee Brandmeier. Any discussion? Having no discussion, please vote your ballot.
Trustee Field.
And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13E.
This is a change order for fencing for local Emerald Pond, and the motion is to approve change order number 1 with Century Fence for $16,720 to install a 4-foot high chain link fence for an Emerald Pond to accommodate future trail addition.
Trustee Lancaster.
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 1 with Century Fence for $16,720 to install for a fence for Hill Pond.
Trustee Van Hefty. I'll second. So we have a motion by Trustee Lancaster and then a second by Trustee Van Hefty. Any discussion? There being no discussion, please vote your ballot.
And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13F.
This is contract approval for building inspection services with Berkshire Inspection Services Incorporated, and the motion is to approve the contract with Berkshire Inspection Services Incorporated to complete commercial plumbing and electrical inspections in 2026.
Trustee Theodore,
I'll make a motion to approve contract for Berkshire Inspection Services Incorporated to complete commercial plumbing and electrical inspections in 2026.
trustee Baldwin.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by trustee Theodore and a second by trustee Baldwin. Any discussion? So we have trustee Legas.
Thank you. My only comment on this is, I don't want time to share some more, so I'm going to this time, but if we find ourselves in this position next year that our in-house building inspector employee doesn't have all the commercial stuff to be able to do this, we should, I believe, have enough notice and they should offer it. Thank you.
The goal is for him to get all these certifications. The problem is the state just adopted a new commercial code, but the legislature keeps delaying its implementation, so we don't have a timeline as to when that's going to be. So he can't take any tests on the commercial code until the legislature and the DSPS decide when they're going to allow examinations to occur.
Say that if we're looking at, every timeline you guys staff feel we need, if you're June, July, August of next year, say where it's like, oh, we're getting our year, just to make sure we're doing things, keeping the best prices for next step. That's all. But I understand,
Yeah, I understand that too, and I think Paul this probably will be his last year, so I don't know that he would be interested in the contract extension because I think he wants to fully retire anyway. So it would behoove us to go out to bid if we needed to.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Having no further discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 13G.
This is contract approval for assessor services for accurate appraisal, and the motion is to approve the 5-year contract with accurate appraisal for $214,800.
Ceiling Hester,
I'll make a motion to approve the 5-year contract with accurate appraisal for $214,000.
trustee Van Hefty. So we have a motion by trustee Lancaster, second by trustee Van Hefty. Any discussion? Trustee Lancaster.
Thank you. I do have one question for staff. Nice. Reevaluations always cause concern among residents. We do get feedback where they think we're trying to grab money, which we're clearly not, and think we're budget process. We talked just recently illustrates that for us. We got ourselves into a situation, I think, as a board and staff, waiting way too long for a market reevaluation where people saw drastic changes. We as a village, this is what residents need to understand. We as a village have no control of the real estate market. I've talked to many people over the process of the reevaluation and things, and I know there's people that don't get homes. They're shocked what their homes are really worth. So my ask here would be that I know we're proposing to not do an reevaluation for 3 years. And it makes sense that I do it more often than you need to, right? With the communication required and everything. But that we really keep a close eye on that 10%. You know, that we're allowed to be within that 10%, and the state allowed to be below that outside that 10% for so many years before we're fully violation and have to do something. But we're getting close to that 90%. It's my belief that we need to move things back up so that people don't see the changes. And so within 2 years, we're closer to that. I think we need to bring this back to the board and most possible contract amendment. And maybe we're at 3 years and there hasn't been much change. We're still at 95% or something. Maybe we don't need to do it. It becomes a 4-year thing. That we're just using that 90% benchmark as a guide, I believe, to when we truly do our reevaluation. I don't know what's going to happen. So you guys can have me in for contract purposes. So I understand.
Jen, got a comment on that?
Sure, that shouldn't be a problem. We can monitor it and see where we go, and we'll have dialogue with the board on a yearly basis.
Any other discussion or requests? Having no further discussion, please vote your ballots. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up is 13H.
This is a job description for the IT manager for the improvement, looking for a motion to approve the IT manager. Description is circulated.
My motion to approve the IT manager job description for circulated.
Trustee Remeyer, those are good. So we got a motion by trustee Lancaster and a second by trustee Remeyer. Any discussion? Trustee Baldwin.
Thank you. Yes, I just have a question. Chad, first of all, I approved the job description, but my question is, maybe I thought this happened and it didn't, but can we talk about potentially sharing this position of this person with another community? Or is this going to be this person's full-time job? And if it is, I mean, I know you have this responsibility right now, Chad, but is this, do we have enough going on from an IT perspective and moving in the future to keep this person busy, full-time?
So you didn't dream that is in the works. There was a study done with Sherwood under grant ABC from the state to share in services. The end result of that report was not what, it justified, it said that there was a need for an IT manager sharing between Sherwood and Harrison. However, it didn't lay out any kind of structure as to how that would happen. So the administrator in Sherwood and myself are still talking about that. And a goal of ours is to work up an intergovernmental agreement in 2026 to share services with Sherwood with this position and kind of develop a help desk kind of format. But my thought is we didn't have time to get it done for the budget adoption. And the thought is I'd like to get the person on board at Harrison to kind of structure how that workflow is going to work versus me guessing, but it is something that would happen and they would provide service to both Harrison and Sherwood and have a contract basis.
Any other discussion? There being no other discussion, please vote your ballot. The motion passes unanimously. Next up is 13I.
This is ordinance V 25-14, regulation of electric scooters, and the motion is to table this until the December meeting to gather public input on the proposal.
Trustee Baldwin.
I mean, motion table until December meeting to get public input on the proposed ordinance.
Trustee Remeyer, close second. So you got a motion by trustee Baldwin and a second by trustee Remeyer to table this to December 2025 to allow staff together more public inputs. Any discussion? Trustee Lancaster.
Yes, question for the board, Chad. I know we originally taken out those vehicles and then we put them back in because of the request for Echo State Court. Since then, I've actually discovered that we actually have a business in Harrison, off of KK or State Park Road, that is actually a dealer for these low speed vehicles with fully proper, turn signals and brake lights and, fully, not just a bumper, one type of thing, fully regulated. And I just wonder if we should, since we're getting looking with, if we should find out if there's any appetite that we should actually allow low speed vehicles that would also support one of our local Harrison businesses. I even know who the owner is, they just happen to drive by and see they have it for sale, and a whole bunch of people out there in their dealer, so this isn't a request for that particular business, but it's just, we should be supporting it, celebrating commercial and commerce in our village. Thank you.
I would refer that question to the police department. I don't know, is joint attendance, I think, I'm not sure if low-speed vehicles are allowed on the road or what the state statute is related to those.
It would be allowed if municipality allows it. I'm not aware of any municipality in Hungary that do allow those vehicles. That's something I'd have to look into.
So I want to make sure that we're focused and we get the situation corrected that we experienced over summer. That the issue was not the e-bikes, it was not golf carts, it was the scooters. I witnessed it myself actually this last week with the e-scooters, and I think we need to do something about it. But I would want to trust Chad and let him go ahead and get the input first. But let's just kind of focus on it. If there's a public appetite and if someone or people want to come to the board and ask if we can do something about golfers, we'd be more than happy to bring it forward and have a discussion, and we as a board come to a consensus on that particular issue. Trustee Behrman or Lancaster?
I'm good with that then, thank you.
Cool. Any other discussion? All right, go ahead and vote your ballot. The motion passes unanimously to table till December 2025. Next up is 13J.
This is the approval of the 5-year road paving plan, and the motion is to approve the 5-year road paving plan as mentioned circulated.
Trustee Lancaster.
I make a motion to approve the 5-year road plan for circulator, and I just want to comment, I'm very happy to see Eisenhower driving here. Thank you.
Trustee Deal. So we have a motion by Trustee Lancaster and a second by Trustee Deal. Any discussion? I will start by saying yes, I agree. I think it'll, I think needed. This process of having a 5-year road plan and just not make sure that this updated approved plan gets on our website at the appropriate spot. Thank you. Any other discussion? There be no other discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up is 13K.
This is approval of the tax incremental agreement with Hidden Haven LLC, and the motion is to approve the tax increment district development agreement between Hidden Haven LLC and the Village of Harrison.
Looking for a motion second. Trustee Benatti.
Like a motion to approve the tax incremental agreement, Haven LLC is present circulated.
Trustee Baldwin.
Second.
So we have a motion by Trustee Benatti and a second by Trustee Baldwin. Any discussion?
If I could just interject a little bit, so there's a lot of information in the memo about this agreement, and what I would just say is that Andy Westmeisel, our village attorney, and myself work pretty aggressively on making sure that everything is covered related to this future development. Although I think it's a good project, I also believe that there's some stuff financially that needs to get in order to finance this thing and move this forward. So there will be no transfer of land and separate CSM filed for this property until a number of benchmarks are met within the agreement, and then there's specific dates that certain things have to be turned over to the village, and we have to prove each of those items before anything big will happen. So the developer's aware of it, he's reviewed it, and he is on board with it. So I hope you're supportive of it. I think this is one of those projects for a wedding barn kind of quality of life measure for the village that a lot of people have asked for to see more of. So I think it'll be a good project, and hopefully it's successful.
Steele.
Thank you, Chad, for your diligence work, getting it to the bottom.
Any other discussion? I mean, personally, I think we're gonna have to let staff work out. Trust the staff. Chad thinks it's a good opportunity for quality of life, and it makes sense financially. Then we got to be up for trusting Chad. So, any further discussion? No, if not, then please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up is 13L.
This is updated policies, procedures, and guidelines for the community room rental and Darwood community park rental applications. And the motion is to approve updated guidelines and policies for the community room rental and the Darwood community park rental applications and policies and guidelines effective January 1st, 2026.
Trustee Bowman.
Motion to approve the updated policies, procedures, and guidelines for the community room rental and Darwood community park rental applications.
Trustee Brennan. So we have a motion by Trustee Baldwin and a second by Trustee Brennan. Any discussion? Trustee Lancaster.
I would actually like to make a minute. I'm making a motion to amend the park shelter rental policy procedures and guidelines for the Broadway Park shelter. And it's striking the line that says non-resident $150 rental fee plus $150 rental street deposit. By striking that line, that means only Harrison and Buchanan residents are able to rent this. The Broadway Park shelter is in very high demand, and I believe should only be allowed to make sure we only have one shelter. So I want to call it out too. And so the fact that we currently only have one shelter, we should give something that our residents, Buchanan residents are allowed as well based on past intergovernmental agreements. That would also line our policy that the community room can only be rented by village Harrison residents. Thank you.
So, Trustee Baldwin.
I just have a question. How often is there a conflict with a non-resident requesting rental? And I don't know, a conflict.
We don't have a lot of non-residents attempting to rent the Darwood Park shelter. If anything, it's more of a business. This doesn't have a Harrison resident wants to use it for a work event.
And one person here.
I don't know conflict that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
So I just want to make one clarification. So Broadway Park used to be the only between Buchanan and Harrison and made an agreement for Buchanan to release control of Broadway Park. the agreement that Buchanan residents would be able to rent that driveway shelter in the park and have the same fee structure as a Harrison resident. That was something that we proposed to them to have a release ownership or have ownership of the park. So I just want you to be aware of that. So just for Lancaster.
Thank you for that. And yes, Angie, yes, I read this way. I'm definitely in favor of leaving line. You're calling out here, so we can residents as is, that is fine. Well, there may not be a lot of conflicts, and while there may not be a lot, there's still, I think, out of the dates away, and once the dates are away, then it's not available for somebody else. So I just, you guys can agree or not, you can just, I got some feedback on that, so that I agree with the person that's been for. So,
What's the process for reservation here? Is it as soon as you get on the calendar, fill out paperwork for some reserve, or is it like?
Currently, the process is a year in advance, so if you want to use it June 17th of 2026, June 17th of 2025, you would have paid for that rental and had it books. The motion report would include that, or change that to November 15th of the year prior to your reservation. So November 15th of 2025, you can rent for all of 2026. But it is a first come first served, and we do allow them a 7-day pool to get their paperwork in.
We'll get a motion, looking for a second, then we can discuss further, I guess.
President Hampshire, you do have a subject on the phone already.
Go on.
Amendment, sorry.
Okay, so I don't see anybody second the amendment, so the amendment motion fails, so we're gonna go back to the motion on the table. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, let's go ahead and vote about it. The motion passes unanimously. I do want, Mr. Lancaster, to have you, if someone does have those kind of issues, have them talk to the staff, and if it's something that is like issue that if not with staff, then we should ask staff them to maybe take a look at it and you always amend policy or any kind to accommodate that should be an issue. So just have them call the staff. All right, next up is 13L.
This is a concept approval for Highcliff Motor Condos, parcel 40090 on State Highway 114, and the motion is to approve the concept plan for Highcliff Motor Condos on parcel 40090.
Mr. Lancaster, actually, if there are any motion first, any discussion motion. Trustee Field.
I will make a motion to approve the concept plan for Highcliff Motor Condos on parcel 40090.
Trustee Van Hefty. Also, so that motion by Trustee Field and a second by Trustee Van Hefty. Discussion. Trustee Lancaster.
question for Chad, has the planning commission seen and discussed this?
They have not, because it typically we would just, it'll go through the planning commission. He just doesn't want to go into a lot of detailed design on this if the village board isn't acceptable of the concept plan, but it'll go back before the planning commission and the board with more detailed information.
So I believe we need to change our process because we have put a lot of effort into our planning commission and a lot of encouragement of our planning commission to be reviewing things and having discussion on things and really evaluating and making recommendations to this board. And I believe they've done a tremendous job in it. I commend Tara said I was leading the planning commission now on her leadership and how she's leading the planning commission. Just hearing from my fellow trustee that you guys talking about wetlands for 30 minutes on the development shows that the planning commission is having some very meaningful discussions. And so I think we would be doing our planning commission a disservice tonight if we approve this concept plan. I have no issue with this. I think it's great for the village actually. But I think our planning commission should have an opportunity to review this concept plan. It could be a concept for them as well before paperwork and stuff always filed. So because I get what you're saying, Chad, not doing a lot. The nation will be a chance to see this concept and see what they think and be recommending that to us.
What I would say, you could refer this back to the planning commission. These things are going to be able to start construction now until spring anyway, so we've got some time. So if the board doesn't want to take action on it, we could refer it to the planning commission and then bring it back to a subsequent board meeting. I'm good with that.
So I'm going to make a motion to amend that we refer this back to the planning commission.
So let's hear what Trustee Bowman, I want to almost say something. So Trustee Bowman.
Mine was just a question. So if I understand the concept correctly, these would be individually owned condominiums. Who pays the property taxes on something like this? And is it the business owner of the building? How's that
Yes.
work?
It would just be like a housing condominium where each individual owner will pay their own taxes. And then there'll be like a condo association fee that would be assessed for all the common areas like the driveways and green spaces and those kinds of snow plowing and other kind of maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
So my only comment is, don't come on the Frank Golding. Say first. Go ahead.
And my take on this is that the planning commission would get the next look at this as a concept plan and give it a yay or a nay. I believe, approving a concept plan, that comments, and I agree, this looks like a good idea. So I don't see an issue with approving a concept plan. We're not approving a final plan. We're approving a concept, which will go to the planning commission. I agree. That's my opinion.
I would say if we all think it's a good idea, let's just approve to move to the next step, which would be to go to the planning commission. I understand developers looking to put in $1 million in the development. They want to get a thumbs up or thumbs down. Otherwise, I gotta go through engineering drawings. And then come at the end of the day, know if the board's not interested. It's just looking and say, yeah, we think it's a good idea to continue the process. So I think that's what we're looking for, right, Chad?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Lancaster.
So I'm not, again, I think this is great. So I'm in favor of this. I guess I'll withdraw my amendment and I'll support this tonight. But I will ask staff that I do believe is a future process. Again, not with them doing any engineering or nothing. We just had a planning commission meeting last week. I'm not criticizing staff for nothing. I'm just trying to have a better process here. But I think the same concept as in our packet, should go to the planning commission as a concept with no engineering, no expense. see what they think of it, and then they are recommending to us as a board. Yes, they like the concept, hey, board, you should approve, we recommend you approve the concept, we get a first look at it, so then based on that recommendation, and then if everybody's giving a thumbs up, then the developer can go spend the money on engineering and all that, and if the planning commission has concerns, they can say, hey, board, we don't think you should approve this concept, because we have these concerns. Because what's gonna happen here, that, and it is or it is not, I don't want to hold up the development, because I think this is a good idea. But it's, now the planning commission is gonna be told, oh, the board already approved this concept, and now they're trying to go against us if they have an issue and creates friction, where that we drop the gun on something, that's all, I really do value the planning commission, and I wanna make sure that they're getting their fish to chicken things, so thank you.
And I understand what you're saying, I do, but we've had an issue where the board and the planning commission won't align. So trying to fix that, so I get that. But we are, at the end of the day, this is where the bus stops right here, so gentlemen, probably just wants to. Just get a quick flavor of where we're at with stuff, so. Well, it's $1 million that you spend without, that's cool. All right, any more discussion? All right, please vote your ballot. Concept that only. And motion passes unanimously. Good luck going to the planning commission. All right, next up is 15M.
This is a debt service fund transfer, and the motion is to approve a transfer of $142,250 from fund balance to debt service occurring in 2025 debt balance.
Trustee Lancaster.
Motion to approve transfer $142,250 from fund balance to debt service to correct your negative balance.
First of all,
One second.
so we got a motion by trustee Lancaster and a second by trustee Baldwin. Any discussion? I guess my only question is 140,000?
So obviously I was not here for 25 budget, so I can't speak on that, but I will say it probably was very difficult for us to try to figure out what the debt service payments were, considering that amount that was taken out so late in 24. That was the original issue for the 25-26 debt for the road projects. And then of course that was taken out at the beginning of this year, for the DPW and the fire project. So it's hard probably to determine what that payment schedule was going to look like ahead of obviously taking out the debt. So I'm sure he did the best he could with projecting where it was at, but based on how it was budgeted, we will end up sitting here and if we don't correct it, so it just makes sense to do it now. So that way once the year closes out, financial statements have a positive balance in there. I believe he brought a similar agenda item forward last year to correct a bunch of prior years where there had been a negative balance for a while. But hopefully moving forward, obviously we talked about taking out debt going forward. If we want to do it in arrears, pay ourselves back, then you really have a lot of these issues, you're paying yourself back, or we should position when we take out debt in accordance so we can do a better job with budgeting for principal and interest payments. But he did the best he could with probably what data he had, not knowing what those payment schedules were going to look like since it was the middle of trying to work through those processes.
This going to help with this.
That's not going to help with the borrowing issue. Correct. It's basically how they structured our payment schedule, and you don't really know that until pretty close to the closing of it. So because that was taken out so late in 24, yes, after basically budget was approved, you only have so much data that much in advance on what that payment structure is going to look like. So like I said, he did the best he probably could with that. But again, moving forward, we'll try to do better. So this doesn't happen again.
Gotcha. Any further discussion? All right, go ahead and vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Right, so that is it for new business and future agenda items. Anyone have any future agenda items? Future meetings, just so I got a meeting notice for board review on November 4th, is that correct?
Yes.
Joint review board. Okay. So
The joint review board is meeting to review the financials of all the TIDs that was previously reviewed with the board that Barrett completed the TIF analysis. So we can share with all our taxing jurisdictions.
order.
Thank you. You're invited participant. All
Right, so that's very cool. We got the November 11th that are we go with the new sergeant and the police, and we got our veterans going. And then we have a meeting after that on November 11th, and then we have December 13th or 16th is our end of year meeting. That's somebody so put that on the calendar. And other than that, watching to adjourn. Just all.
I just have a question on the November 11th cookout. What's our role that day? Are we cooking? Are we serving? Where is this going to be? Inside, outside?
Chad, you got any more insight on that?
Yeah, it probably will be in the boardroom, and I'll let you know what your role is before that meeting or before that event.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Next, we just need a motion. We got a motion by trustee Van Hefty and a second by trustee Baldwin to adjourn. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting adjourned. Hey, Chad, hold on a second.
Can Megan turn off the recording?
Yeah, it's not.